First meeting, kind of with, I looked this up in Robert's Rules of Order on how to proceed when you have a commission that no longer has a chair. We still have the vice chair from our last commission setting, and automatically with that and his tenure here, he automatically becomes the chair. And so with that, Commissioner Adams, you are the chair for this meeting until we vote on who's going to be the next chair by default. You are it. So I turn the time over to you, Commissioner Adams.
Okay, thank you. We had a wonderful swearing-in ceremony today, and I congratulate both Jamie and Sylvia and all the other elected officials, Brittany, especially Brittany, because she keeps us in line. But it's an exciting time for San Juan County to have these newly elected officials, and we intend to do the business of the people. First on our agenda today is we will consider our Pledge of Allegiance and prayer from our previous meeting to carry over into this one. But first on our agenda is public comment. So turn the time over to Mac for any public comment that we might have.
Okay, I didn't see anybody signed up from the members of the audience that wanted to give a public comment. If you are wishing to make a public comment, just raise your hand and we'll notify and recognize you. If not, I'm not seeing any hands go up quickly in the audience. If there's anybody online wanting to make a public comment, you can go ahead and raise your hand. If you right click on your name, there's the raise your hand feature. Or if not, if you go ahead and you mute yourself, then we can recognize you at that time as well. Marlene, did you wish to make a public comment?
No.
Okay. All right. With that,
no public comment. We have this at each and every commission meeting. Public get a chance to give us some sage wisdom and advice. First on our business items is consider and approve a resolution setting the terms of rotation of the chair and vice chair for the Board of San Juan County Commission. I can't remember, Mac, is the appointment a 2-year appointment or every year?
it's an annual.
Okay.
We typically go through and you rotate those annually. In the past, there's been some just direction given every 2 years instead, but typically it's every year.
Okay.
That kind of gives everybody an opportunity within a 4-year segment to at least be chair and
Right.
kind of have that opportunity of training and learning of how to chair a meeting.
Okay, I'll receive a motion for the position of vice chair of the San Juan County Commission for 2023. Either one of you like to make a motion
For vice chair?
for vice chair?
You can nominate yourselves or nominate
Okay.
one another.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Stubbs for vice chair.
Okay,
Are you okay to do that,
without
Commissioner
much
Stubbs?
protest.
Do we have to arm wrestle?
All those in favor of Sylvia being the vice chair, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, then that motion carries. Now, we'll go through the other assignments. The consent agenda, as you can see, we have 3 items. One is to approve the December 20th, 2022 commission meeting minutes. They're in your packet. We'll also approve the December 19th budget hearing meeting minutes and the December 3rd and December 3 and 17 check register for commission meeting. And we do this collectively, is why we call it the consent agenda. So if I'll take a motion on the consent agenda, which is items 3, 4, and 5.
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, Jamie makes the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Sylvia. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous.
Okay, Commissioner Adams, if I may just add a little bit on there just
Okay.
for the background. Commissioners, as you go through, you see these consent, I kept them under the consent agenda items today. But in the future, I just ask as you go through and you receive the board packet, look through the minutes. The minutes typically nowadays are required to be more of a summary. They're not verbatim of the meeting. And so just look through them with those eyes and that understanding that they are summary minutes of the meeting, really the recording, and we record each of our meetings and have official recorded minutes. Those are the ones that are posted up to Utah Public Notice and on our website as well. And so please do, as you get an opportunity, and I know it's a lot in our packet, but feel free to go through those minutes. If there's changes in there, whether it's misspellings or you thought you said something that's important to have in the written minutes that were, omitted, do so in that fashion. And so know that even though we do have them on the consent agenda item, you can make changes to that and we can still approve of them on there with the following changes as long as we acknowledge it in the meeting as doing so. With the check registers, typically where you have commissioners without an executor, like an administrator that goes through our budgets, a lot of times commissions in other counties will sign the checks. Here we don't do that. So all of the check registers or all of those payments, those purchases that we've made, and you are kind of approving those retroactive of them being made. And so know that, but if there's concerns, let me know on there. Commissioner Adams has been great about going through the check registers. He'll flag those ones that he has as a concern, and we'll discuss them in commission meeting. And so just look through those. It's typically, I liken it to like your checkbook at home. You're making sure that everything makes sense on there to you. You see who the company is that we're paying to. You'll see the purchase orders and contracts come through commission office, which should correlate with what we're expending. Also, you'll have some of the reimbursements from staff as they take travel trips and they're reimbursed on those. You'll see those reimbursements in there. And so there's any question, sometimes there will be an exorbitant amount that isn't typical of our expenditures. Well, what in the world is that? And so it's always good just to question. So don't be afraid or intimidated with that. For just where you're entering your new term, there's going to be a confusion until you're caught up to speed, and that's normal. And so ask away any questions at all. And in that consent item, we can keep them there. If there's items in the consent agenda that you want further dialogue and further discussion, you can also pull that out and we can stick it down in business action items for further dialogue, further discussion, further direction from you. So just as we place those items in there, don't feel like they're stuck under the consent and just take one vote on those items, but really take a look at that. And those are typically what you'll see is the consent agenda item is really that routine government operations that we'll constantly always see. Commission minutes, check registers, some of our contracts as you've seen them before and we amend them, then we'll put the amendments up there. Typically our appointments to other boards, then we'll stick them up there as well in the consent agenda item. And so know that it's all open for you guys. It's a learning experience and we anticipate that. And so if you have any questions with that going forward, then just ask away. And so
I'll add a little bit to that. In December, we meet with every department head in November, actually, and ask them what items they want us to consider for approval for the following year. So when the clerk auditor gets these bills, those bills fall within the budget that has been budgeted for that office. And a lot of times, since we only meet every 2 weeks, they'll go ahead and pay those bills sometimes. So sometimes we're just ratifying what has already been done, but that doesn't mean we can't question them. And most of the time, the questions will be, was this money in their budget? Was it budgeted for, or was it outside the budget? Because if it's outside the budget, they need to come and get permission to spend that money from the commissioners, because we're the last backstop that there is in paying the bills. So it's a pretty good process, and it's one that, if we had to go through and approve every bill, we'd be here for a couple of days. But it's worked really well, but certainly the opportunity is there. If you have a question on a bill that has been paid or is being approved to be paid, don't hesitate to ask it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll head back to that one.
number 2. Oh, number 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Good thing we have Mac here. Go back to your agenda to number 1. We need to take
We're gonna switch to training
okay,
here.
that's the training. I thought
So what it is on this item number 1 is the Utah Oath of Public Office and Utah Statutes of Accountability training. So if you were here earlier, I had mentioned that we're going to have this training on more of what the oath of office means. And so with that, we're also going to be trained on the accountability training. Here's what's required of county commissioners to be trained on an annual basis. We have the Open and Public Meetings Act, Government Records Access and Management Act, County Officials and Employees Disclosure Act, prohibiting employment of family members and offenses against the administration of government. And all of this, we have Johnny Miller. Johnny Miller, I consider, is a great friend to the county. Commissioner Adams probably does as well. There's probably not a month that doesn't go by that I don't speak to Johnny on some order of business or actions of the county or whatever. He's
Mac,
was it the CEO?
Let me give a little background.
Yeah,
first.
go ahead.
1992,
He's got
we were being insured by the Utah Local Governments Trust for all of our liability. They decided they were not going to insure county law enforcement and jails. So counties were stuck. We had no liability insurance for the jails and for the police officers. So a group of really wise commissioners, and this goes all the way back to Calvin Black and Bill Red and others, decided to form a new liability company, and one that would insure counties. And they met with a bunch of counties and said, we want to set up a liability company. And San Juan County not only wanted to do that, but they offered to put some money and put $100,000 in the pool, along with Emery County and a few others, to have a surplus there that we could actually start that company. So USIP, Utah County Indemnity Pool, has been in operation since 1992, I think. And so Johnny is the third director for USIP, and right now I'm the sitting president of that organization. And I've only been there since 2007. So it's something that was really needed and has been invaluable to the counties, is to have USIP insure and take care of our liability. So Johnny's been the director since 2008. So he's here to give you some training and give me some training. So we'll turn the time over to Johnny.
There's that mouse.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Yeah, when they started the pool back in 1992, all the counties, for the most part, there was just one county. Salt Lake County has been self-insured on their own since even before any of the other pools were created. But all the other counties belong to a pool, one or the other. All but one decided to go through the Association of Counties. We're actually an interlocal agency of all the counties. So there's one agreement between all the counties as far as how, that the board decides how much money is going to be paid in each year to replenish the funds, and they're going to decide what coverages are provided. And so at this point, the pool provides all the coverages for the county. When the buildings burn, we reimburse the county for the cost to rebuild the buildings. When the vehicles get smashed up, we pay for all the repairs. And when you get sued, we hire an attorney that's an expert in the area that you're being sued for to assist the county attorney in defending that claim. Because the counties, unlike cities, it's a statutory obligation that the county attorney defend every single claim. And the commission, through case law, cannot hire a different attorney to defend the county. It's the county attorney's job to do that. That's what they've been elected for. So our attorneys just assist the county attorney in doing their job. And after 30 years, we've got a pretty good track record. I've only signed maybe 3 or 4 checks in the 15 years that I've been here where the courts have found that a county actually did something negligent. And so even though we get sued hundreds of times a year, many of them are just unfounded. And because of that, because we work so hard and we let the counties decide when they want to settle their claims and when they don't. We don't just settle a claim. The county has to agree that they want to settle a claim. Because of that, we've been able to keep our rates very low. When the counties first started, they just paid in whatever they had been paying to the Utah Local Governments Trust, and a couple of them were with insurance companies. Within 4 years, I think it was, we had paid back all the counties that had put money in. And within 7 years, we started reducing the rates. And by the time I got here in 2008, the rates that we were charging the counties were less than half of what they had been paying in 1992. And for many counties, that's still the case. I'm doing this exact training actually in 2 weeks in Emery County. And Emery County was one of them that paid extra to get in because they knew that they were not getting a fair shake with their coverage. They still today pay less than they paid in 1989 for their insurance. So the organization has really, through the leadership of the commissioners and auditors and attorneys and others that sit on our board of directors, they want to make sure that we're providing all the coverages that the counties need and do so at more or less a break even, that we don't need to build a big bank of money. We just need enough to be able to pay the claims. So that's worked out very well. Why I'm here today.
Johnny,
Yes.
who's the longest serving president of the Association of Counties? And I don't think it's me.
Actually, I believe it's Mr. Herbert.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Gary Herbert.
Governor
Utah
Herbert
County.
was on our board of directors for many years,
Wow.
through some real troubling times, and did a really good job. We've had some real infamous commissioners on our board of directors over the years. But I'm here today not so much as your liability risk manager, because many of the things that we're going to talk about today are things that I'd like to train on, because I hate getting called by the commissioners or another elected official or the county attorney and say, we've got an issue here, Johnny, can you help us? And I don't like having to answer that question with, I'm sorry, I can't. And so that's why I do these trainings on these issues, because as we'll see when we go through these issues, many of these laws are not things that the county would violate. They are things that the public official, the individual public official would violate. And many of them have criminal charges. So of course, like an insurance company, we don't cover people for criminal activity. So that's why I want to make sure that everyone understands these issues, and because that way you don't get in trouble and I don't have to tell you that I can't help you out. Now, many times some of these issues that open meetings and grandma are a part of another larger lawsuit, And so we'll assist you with that piece of a larger lawsuit that we're covering. But generally, if it's just simply a claim that you violated the Open Meetings Act, that's not something we get involved in. So I want to make sure you understand it. So with that, this morning we're going to talk about the oath of office that you all just took. We're also going to talk about general fiduciary duties, and then we'll talk about the specific ethics laws, as Mac pointed out. So we start with the oath of office, and we all just swore that you will support, obey, defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Utah. You'll discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Now, and that's the key word here, is with fidelity. And that's the piece that many people forget. Yes, we're going to follow all the laws, but fidelity is a very important issue. And even in most corporate settings, the board of directors of a large corporation will take a similar oath of fidelity to the corporation. Remember that the county is also a corporation. It's not just a government entity. It is also a corporation. What fidelity means, if you look in the dictionary, is faithfulness to a person, cause, or belief demonstrated by continuing loyalty and support. So to conduct your duties of office with fidelity creates what is known in legal terms as a fiduciary duty. And you owe your fiduciary duty to the public. A corporate board member would owe their fiduciary duty to the company. You owe yours to the public by way of the county. So let's look closer at what the fiduciary duty is. The fiduciary duty consists of the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, the duty of impartiality, the duty of accountability, and in the case of a government official, you have an extra duty that most corporate members do not, and that is the duty to preserve the public's trust in government. Many corporate board members would say they have a duty to preserve the trust in that company. And lots of companies have learned that lesson the hard way, that if the public doesn't trust you, you don't stay in business very long. But for government, it is very important. Now, you owe those duties to the county as a corporation and to the constituents as the county as more or less the shareholders of that corporation, if that makes sense. So the first duty that we saw there with the fiduciary duties is the duty of care. And this means that public officials have to completely and faithfully execute the duties of their office. Some examples of how you meet that duty is that you manage the assets competently and be good stewards of the public treasury. So as Mac pointed out, if you have a question on an expenditure, you should ask the question and make sure that you understand what that money was spent on. Use due diligence in the selection of supervision of staff. So you want to make sure that when you're in that hiring process, that you are hiring competent people that can do the work, and that you supervise them well. If they do not do their job, that you carry through with appropriate discipline. Also, following the rules and uphold the Constitution and laws of the jurisdiction. So all federal laws, state laws, and county ordinances. You want to make sure that you consider them each time you make a decision. Some examples of a breach of the duty of care would be failure to attend meetings. Many counties have, and other boards have restrictions on how many board meetings you can miss without being excused before you're removed from office. I think there's already a bill this year already filed that would make that apply to county commissioners. There is the duty or failure to investigate. So if you hear that there has been some, let's say, fraud within one of the departments, that you would conduct an investigation and do that impartially, and but follow through with that investigation and not just ignore it. Also, the failure to engage in the deliberative process, which means when you're here and questions come up, that you deliberate amongst one another and you ask questions and you make sure you understand the issue before you vote on a new resolution. And that is why the public's here, is to hear that deliberation and that you do it in the public's eye. And then also the failure to vote is another issue that is an important one with the duty of care. And as we see later, as we review the Disclosure Act for county commissioners and county officials, there's nothing in any of the ethics acts in the state of Utah that say that if a commissioner or a city council person or any other official has a conflict of interest, the only thing the Ethics Act do is require you to disclose that in public, so the public knows you have that conflict before you vote. But there is nothing in any of those ethics laws that says you cannot vote. And so you will, what this says is you'd also be violating your fiduciary responsibility if you are regularly abstaining from voting. And with a 3-person commission, it makes it very difficult when people start abstaining from votes. It's hard to get the business done.
We've had some occasion from time to time where a citizen would bring an accusation of a conflict of interest, thinking that that would make that commissioner exclude themselves from voting. And, we've had to explain to them all that commissioner has to do is declare that there is a conflict of interest and then go ahead and vote. And I'm not sure how well the public really understands that.
Yeah, and we'll cover that very much more in depth when we get to the County Disclosure Act, because again, there's nothing in the statute that would prohibit someone from voting. And actually, last year, the legislature passed a law that requires now an elected body such as yourselves to take a roll call vote on all votes. And then it goes on to say that the minutes will be recorded as either a vote of aye, nay, or absent. It does not say that you can record a vote of abstention. And I think that was on purpose, that especially in 3-person commissions, the legislature does not want to see regular abstention from votes. And in many states, county commissions and city council members are restricted from abstaining. They must vote on every single issue. We don't have that here yet in Utah, but we'll see what happens through the legislature. The next duty that you have under that fiduciary responsibilities is the duty of loyalty. And you must put the public's interest before your own interests or those of any indirect personal interests that you might have. So here you have to remember that you can breach that obligation when you decide that you do something that does not benefit the public. You do it because you own a business, or you are a partner in a venture, or you belong to a certain group that would benefit from it, but the county does not benefit from it. That you cannot do. So the types of benefits that you want to make sure, if you have a conflict in the area for financial, a career-related conflict, or a personal conflict, that you disclose those. And we'll look over those specifically when we get to that act. So when there are general ethics duties to family, friends, or other associates conflict with your public duty, again, you have to do what's best for the county when you vote. The duty of impartiality, and this goes a little bit further beyond loyalty into impartiality, where now that you've been sworn into office, you represent all the constituents of San Juan County. Even though here in San Juan, unlike other counties, you have districts within the counties that the commissioners are elected from, still, once you take office, you don't just represent the people in your area. You represent all the constituents in the entire county. So you cannot favor or punish persons or the county based on your party, based on supporters, that either those that voted for you or those that voted against you, based on constituency or any protected status. All of those things. Again, I'm not saying that you can't continue to hold your morals and faith close to your heart, but what you think is important for your party, let's say, If it is detrimental to the county, you must vote for what's best for the county and put that other group aside for that vote. Does that make sense? Great. So you have to overcome any of that inherent bias. And much of the Equal Protection Clause under the U.S. Constitution is, in essence, it codifies all of this, that you must represent all of the constituents within the organization that you have sworn an oath to. The duty to maintain the public trust. And again, this is the extra one that we all get when we are an official or employee of a county. And this, again, these all extend not just to county officials, but county employees as well, that they sometimes forget. Public officers must protect and maintain the public trust. And the way you do that is you avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And that's why when we discuss the things that you must disclose a conflict for later, most elected officials are going to disclose many more conflicts that aren't on the list just to make sure that they are avoiding this appearance of potential impartiality. Also conducting duties with civility. It's really interesting to go on YouTube and see some of the actual fist fights that break out at some city council meetings. And that certainly does not bode well for the public trust that you can do your job well. So always conduct your duties with civility and treat your colleagues and the public with respect is very important to meet this fiduciary responsibility. The duty of accountability we talked about. And so we're going to go back to that duty of accountability and talk about the ways that our state legislature has put into the statute ways to make sure that elected officials here in Utah follow that duty of accountability. And those consist of the open meetings, the accessibility to public records, and the disclosure of conflicts of interest. And each one of those is addressed in the statutes, in separate statutes. We have the Open and Public Meetings Act, or OPMA, as you'll hear it referred to. You'll start to learn the alphabet soup starting today. Government Records Access and Management Act, or GRAMA, and the County Officials and Employees Disclosure Act, which most people will call the Ethics Act. For state employees, it's the State Employee Ethics Act. For cities, it's the City or Municipal Ethics Act. For counties, we didn't want the word ethics in it for some reason and made it the Disclosure Act, but they're all three very, very similar. And then we have the prohibiting employment of family members. Most people refer to that as the Nepotism Act. And then the offenses against the administration of government, which are things that are in the criminal code that public officials must not do. So we'll cover a few of the real important ones there. So the Open Public Meetings Act. First of all, you have to decide if you're subject to Open Public Meetings Act. And to do so, you look at two very important definitions within the Act. The first one is, because all public meetings must be open to the public, you have to look at what is a meeting and what is a public body that's conducting a meeting. So a meeting means the convening of a public body with a quorum, whether in person or electronically, for the purpose of discussing, receiving comments from the public about, or acting upon a matter over which the public body has jurisdiction or advisory power. And they go on to say that a meeting does not include a chance social meeting. So that's why when you had donuts this morning, that was more of a social gathering, right? And was not a public meeting. But there will be many times you'll go to training at UAC, go to the conference at UAC, and you may be together at lunch. Those are not quite as chance as when you meet at the grocery store or at the gas station, but they are still, you are not convening a meeting to do the business of the county. And that is why the courts ruled in the lawsuit that was filed against you several years back when commissioners met with the Secretary of the Interior to show him the Bears Ears Monument. He had invited them to come and answer his questions. It was not a meeting of the county to do the county's business. And that's why the courts ruled that was not the public meeting. They did not convene. Even though there was a quorum present, they did not convene to conduct county business, and they certainly did not have jurisdiction or advisory power over the monument, or they wouldn't have had to been meeting with the Secretary of the Interior. So that is what you want to consider when you're talking about, is it a meeting or is it not a meeting? When in doubt, call Brittany. And if Brittany's in doubt, she'll call me or one of the other experts. And we'll make sure, because this is one, again, that you don't want to violate. If it is a meeting that you need to conduct in the open, you want to do that. So it says it's a meeting of a public body. So what's a public body? Any administrative, advisory, executive, or legislative body which consists of 2 or more persons, is created by law or ordinance, which spends or is supported by taxes, and is vested with the authority to make decisions regarding the public's business. So the thing there that you should consider, and I know Mac watches this very closely, is as you create advisory committees, committees to do project work and provide recommendations and things like that, you really need to go to this definition and determine, did we just create a public body? Because many library boards, the Planning Commission in statute is clearly a public body. All of their meetings have to be done open to the public. Many library boards, health boards, things of that sort can be public bodies and must comply with this act. So any of those committees or advisory groups that you want to utilize, you'll want to go through that review to determine whether or not they need to be subject to OPMA. Now, all meetings of public bodies have to be open to the public, which means they need to have access to view you, to observe you conduct your meeting, except portions of the meeting that are closed sessions. And we'll talk specifically about what the ability for you to close a session. So any meeting where business of the entity will be acted on, it includes, they talk about in the statute, it includes a workshop or an executive session in which a quorum is present, but it does not include a workshop that is strictly administrative. So if you are simply meeting with the department heads, Bruce said that you meet with the department heads and they give you reports. If you are simply receiving reports from the department heads, that's an administrative meeting. The Open Meetings Act is really concerned about making sure that when you are taking any legislative action, passing an ordinance, updating an ordinance, passing new policies, that those things are done in the open. But you also need to be careful, though, that if you're in a strictly administrative meeting and getting a report from a department head, if they bring up an issue that you think is important and something needs to be done, you can't discuss it, you can't deliberate about it in that meeting. You have to wait, put it on the agenda, and deliberate over it and make a decision on what you're going to do about that situation in this open public meeting. Okay? So, a few things that we all have to do, any public body, before you hold a public meeting is, first you have to have rules of order and procedure. Every public body must have their rules of order and procedure. You have to make those available at your public meeting space for the public to inspect if they want to look at your rules and figure out if there's any opportunity for them to make an issue or call something on during the board meeting. You need to do that, and you need to post them on your public website. Now, I know Mac referred to Robert's Rules of Order. I know that some counties and cities still say that they follow Robert's Rules of Order. I've been doing this now for counties around the United States for over 30 years, and I have never seen a county commission or a city council actually use Robert's Rules of Order for their meeting.
Just pieces.
Yes, it's pieces of Robert's Rules of Order. And actually, if you read Robert's Rules of Order, and I've got it on my desk, because you'd have to bring the whole 734-page book to every single meeting. And the problem is you can't post Robert's Rules of Order on your public website because it's copyrighted. But it says right in there, it is not for use for groups of less than 12. And even 12 to 15, that's not what it's made for. But there is a shortened version that they speak to how you would conduct a meeting with a group of less than 12. And of course, because USIP is an interlocal agency, we have our own rules of order for our board. I actually did, because I did this training a couple of weeks ago in Uinta and Duchesne counties. Duchesne realized that they were still saying they were following Robert's Rules of Order. So I've been working the last couple of weeks, and it will be coming out with a sample rules of order to send out to all the counties and all the special districts that are members of ours, so that they can adopt those. The other thing with rules of order is you want to make the decision as the commission. Do you want your one set of rules of order to apply to all of the other public bodies that answer to you, the planning commission, library board, any of those others that would need to hold open and public meetings, or do you want to allow them the discretion to create their own? You must notice your regular meeting, and you also have to post an agenda for each and every meeting. That agenda has to be posted at least 24 hours in advance. You have to identify each item to be deliberated or acted upon with reasonable specificity, is what the statute says. So you can't simply say approve building permit. You need to give enough information so that the public reading that notice has an idea of what building permit are you talking about, so that they know whether or not they want to come to the meeting or not. You have to also include documents provided to the public body for the meeting. You have to have those available at the meeting as well. So anything you've got there behind the DS that Matt gave to you for this meeting, if someone in the audience wants to see that, they get to see a copy of it as well. And you must have a resolution, rule, or ordinance to allow for an electronic meeting. Many people just put that in their rules of order and procedure. And in that electronic meeting ordinance, you must show how you are going to count a quorum. So are the people that are on the telephone part of the quorum, or are they not? Are they considered at the meeting? Can they vote or can they not vote? With the three-person commission, again, usually you're doing a electronic meeting because you need all three commissioners there. So, but just make sure that you've got that done in your code. Then once you've got all that done, now you're ready to actually conduct your meeting. And again, you must allow the public to observe your meeting. So the accommodations at the anchor location need to be such that the public can actually observe you doing your work. And the statute does use the term observe here when we talk about a public meeting. They use the word participate when we talk about a public hearing, where we know that the statute is very clear that at a public hearing, all persons who want to speak get to speak. But there is case law that is clear that in a public meeting, something short of a public hearing, the public has a right to observe, but they do not have a right to speak. That is your privilege that you would allow them. By having public comment on your agenda, you are providing that privilege to to people to comment at this public meeting. It is not a requirement of the statutes. There was a bill last year, and it's been refiled again this year because it didn't pass last year, that will require reasonable public comment at all public meetings. There's a lot of debate over that. Number one, because immediately the legislature that brought that bill excluded the legislature from that law. And there are still some legislators that are, yeah, they are very, very skeptic of a law that they exclude themselves from. So I don't know if that will pass this year or not. So while they don't have a right to speak, generally the chair under most rules of order may allow public comment because you put it on your agenda, you can. But again, you need to make sure that during that public comment that it is only discussion by the public. If commissioners have clarifying questions to ask the commenter to make sure that you understand what they're saying, you can ask them questions, things of that sort, but you cannot begin to deliberate amongst yourselves because now you've crossed the line where you are discussing an item that was not on the agenda. Unless the commenter is commenting on a specific agenda item, then you can. You can remove a person if they are willfully disrupting the meeting to the extent that orderly conduct is seriously compromised. So you want to make sure that you are not excluding people from meetings, but if you have someone who will not sit down, will not stop talking, will not listen to the chair, you can have them removed from the meeting. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of meetings in the Wasatch Front area as of late where they've had to remove people from the public meeting in order to conduct their business. Actually, I reviewed this last week, and I had it down on the UAC tracker that this bill passed. One of your former commissioners brought a bill that made it a misdemeanor for someone to intentionally exclude a member of the public who has a right to attend a meeting from attending the meeting. And that tracker showed it that had passed, and it actually did not. But I think he intends to bring that again to clarify that you can't keep someone from a public meeting if they have a right to be there, and wants to make it a crime for doing so. So we talked about you have to have every meeting open except any session within a closed meeting or open meeting that you close. So let's look at the reasons why you can close a meeting. Number one is to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical mental health of an individual, which is sometimes referred to as the personnel exclusion. And I warn you about that because it is not a personnel exclusion. It may be personnel related in that you're discussing the professional competence of, say, a department head that you've appointed, and you question whether or not they're competent to continue in their position. You can close the meeting to have that discussion, but again, you can only discuss the competence or health of that individual. As soon as you start to talk about, well, I think that whole department's done a really good job this year, let's give them all a 5% raise, that is not under the scope of this permitted use of the closed session exclusion. So all of those discussions need to be done in open public meeting. Again, when in doubt, ask Mac or Brittany, and we'll make sure that you stay the straight and narrow. You can close a meeting to discuss collective bargaining strategy, which I think Salt Lake is the only one that has active unions in the state right now, so you wouldn't be closing for that. Discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation. So if someone has actually started the process of bringing a lawsuit against the county, you can close your meeting to discuss that litigation. And I always recommend that you have the county attorney in the room with you. If it's for the discussion of litigation, you should probably have your attorney who's representing you there. To discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, but only if it's your property, and by discussing it in an open public meeting, you're not going to get the best terms possible for that purchase, exchange, or lease. And then there's a similar one for the sale of property. So any exchange of property or lease of property, if you think that discussing it in the public means you're not going to get as good a price or as good a terms, then you can close the meeting to have that discussion. You can also close a meeting to discuss deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems. So the highway department has had vandalism problems at one of the sheds. And so the sheriff is going to put up a camera to keep an eye on the shed. And you don't want people to know that there's a camera keeping an eye on the shed. You can have that discussion in a closed meeting. Investigate proceedings regarding allegations of criminal conduct. So again, if you have an employee that is alleged to have committed a crime and you are investigating that as the commission, you can close the meeting to discuss that. And again, best to have the county attorney with you when you have that discussion. And also to discuss confidential commercial information is the last one. And this is a half a page of statute that I'm not going to get into. If you ever think that you might need to close the meeting for confidential commercial information, again, review it with Brittany and make sure that you're able to close for that purpose. because any action that results from a discussion in a closed meeting in violation of the act can be nullified or voided. So you just have to go back and do it again in open public meeting if you did it in closed meeting. And the courts don't like it. They will chastise you for doing that. You have to be conducting a properly noticed open public meeting first. So it's not a closed meeting. It's a closed session of an open public meeting. You have to have a 2/3 of the body present and must vote to hold a closed session. And you must identify the specific reason for the closed session on the recording and in the minutes. So that's why, again, the chair needs to have that script of we're closing the meeting to discuss the professional competence, mental health, or physical health of an individual. And you need to make sure that's on the record, both in the open public meeting and then when you open up the closed meeting, you have to repeat it again for the record. Okay. And you may not take any action in a closed session other than to end the closed session and return to open meeting. So motion to adjourn and return back to the open meeting is the only motion that can be made during a closed session. All closed sessions need to be recorded. Minutes are optional. You don't need to take minutes of a closed session, but with 2 exceptions, you must record all of them. The 2 exceptions are the discussion of security devices or the discussion of professional competence, physical, mental health of an individual. Those, if you don't record them, then whoever chairs that closed session must sign an affidavit that that was the only thing that was discussed during that closed session. The other recordings are protected under GRAMA. The public doesn't have access to them. They are recorded so that if someone questions that you discussed more than you should have during that closed session, a judge will listen to the tape and decide whether or not you did or not. This is the section that it is a Class B misdemeanor for an intentional violation of the closed meeting provisions of the Open Meetings Act. So again, make sure that you are in the right place when you close the session and that you don't discuss anything other than what you closed the session for. For minutes, again, your clerk's going to take minutes. They have to be taken for all public meetings. They have to include time, date, and place, all of that good information. You can use your recording as your minutes if you have links identified on that recording to show the place in the recording where different matters are discussed. So if you bookmark more or less the recording on your website to show when you discussed each item, then you can use those as your minutes and not actually have minutes. I don't know of any counties that actually do that, but it is allowed under the law because the minutes do become the official record of the meeting. Minutes of an elected public body have to show the roll call for all votes in a list format for the county commission. An appointed body like the planning commission, they would only have to show the roll for a non-unanimous vote. They have to have draft minutes available within a reasonable period, which in the court cases that we've had so far, court seems to say about 10 days. You have to have a draft of the minutes available to the public, have to have them available. And you have to have the approved minutes available within 3 days of the date that you approve them. So 3 days from now, somebody asks for those minutes you just approved, you have to have them ready to go. For recordings, you have to record all public meetings as well, and they have to be complete and unedited. They must be properly labeled or identified with the date, time, and place that the meeting took place, and they have to be made available within 3 days of the meeting. So the recording has to be available always within 3 days of the meeting. So that's open public meeting. Questions? All right, we go on to the Government Records Access Management Act, or GRAMA, as you'll hear it referred to. And similar to the Open Public Meetings Act, GRAMA says all records that the county has are public records, with exception. And so you've got to look at what the exceptions are to determine whether or not a record is public, because there are many protected documents that are protected for one reason or another. And the real thing here with GRAMA is that it's a balancing act. Even records that are protected, that are not just public records, you might have to provide to the public. It depends. Is it more important for the public to know that information than it is for the person or persons that that information is about to keep it private? And that's the balancing act that GRAMA and the State Records Committee and the courts try and balance to make that decision of what records are public and which records are not. Under GRAMA, all records have to be classified as to whether or not they are public or which classification of protected status they hold. You need to maintain the records under retention schedule that you have approved by the state archives department, and you provide records access to the public and media, and you must provide an appeal or review process for dissatisfied persons. So know that you've got all that in place here in San Juan County. You have your records officers that know the law, will make the first decision of whether or not a record is released. Then it goes to your appeal authority to decide whether or not a mistake was made. And then from there, it would go into the courts or to the State Records Committee to have them review that. So again, rely on your records officers. One of the commissioners, probably, if not Mac, should be the trying to remember what they call it, but the person that gets the notice of whether or not your records officer has taken their annual training and passed their annual training. So you want to make sure that that's done each year. Okay, so that's GRAMA. The big thing with GRAMA for you elected officials is if the county gives you a cell phone or an email address, use it. Don't use your personal. Because once you use your personal electronic device or your personal email to get things that have to do with the county, now you potentially opened up your personal account to GRAMA requests. So keep the county business going to the county email or the county phone. Just makes it easier for you. And you will be asked from time to time to search your records if you do get things. If people do send you county-related business items on your personal email, you'll be asked from time to time. You need to go through every email and see if you've got anything that has to do with this issue. And so you also want to make sure you're not deleting emails that have to do with county business. Check with your records officer if that is something that you are doing. Questions on GRAMA? We'll go to the County Officers and Employees Disclosure Act. So what the Disclosure Act is there for, and the Ethics Acts for municipal and state employees, is to keep unethical use of your position. You've been elected to an office, and the legislature doesn't want you using that position for your own personal benefit. So you may not use or attempt to use your position to substantially further personal economic interest or secure special privilege or exemption for yourself or others. And when they say yourself or others, they're generally talking about family members, business partners. Okay. You also cannot accept employment that might impair your independence of judgment or interfere with the ethical performance of your public duties. So other employment for the employees, most every county has a secondary employment policy as part of their HR policy that restricts them to have other employment unless it's approved by the county, because you're looking for this conflict. Are they doing something on the outside with another employer that would have them impair their judgment when they're doing their work as a county employee? For elected officials, it's a little bit more difficult. You have to decide whether or not any employment that you might take is going to impair your ability to do what's right when you're here making decisions for the county. You also may not have personal investments in any business entity, which will create a substantial conflict between your private interests and your public duties. So if you own a business, That you always have to be considerate of how that business may be impacted by the county, and decide whether or not you need to disclose. And a personal investment here means you have an investment of $2,000 or more is what the statute says. So the first prohibition under the Disclosure Act, because there's a couple of things that are prohibited and then there's a bunch of things that you have to disclose. So the first thing that you're prohibited from is using private, controlled, or protected information. Those are the three classifications under GRAMA for protected records. They are different levels of protected under the law. So if it's not a public record and you use your position to use or disseminate that information, you've violated the Disclosure Act. So you can't accept employment or engage in business activity that would require you to disclose information that you have access to as a public official or public employee. You also cannot disclose or use that controlled or private protected information to substantially further your own personal economic interest or secure special privilege with someone else. So my recommendation always, and when I do this training on the Disclosure Act for employees, I tell them, never just go to the copier, never just hit print. If it's a record that you're taking from the county, go around the other side of the clerk's desk and fill out a GRAMA request and get it through the GRAMA process. If it's a public record, they'll hand it over to you. If it's not, then you shouldn't have it and it's going to get you in trouble. Accepting a gift, compensation, or loan is another prohibition under the Act. And this is the one that most people think of right away when they think about the Ethics Act, is taking a gift. So the Act says you cannot knowingly receive, accept, take, seek, or solicit, directly or indirectly, for yourself or another, a gift of substantial value or substantial economic benefit tantamount to a gift. But the gift would have to tend to improperly influence a reasonable person to depart from the person's faithful and impartial discharge of their public duties. And that's why the legislature has already set the threshold at anything of a value of less than $50 that's not cash is not going to cause any elected official to not perform their duties faithfully. So that's okay. That's not a gift under $50. But that's what we're looking for, is something that you receive that that a normal person would say that would cause me to change my mind on how I vote. So again, a reasonable person would know or should know it's primarily for the purpose of rewarding you for an official action taken, because this is a violation not only by the elected official that takes the gift, it's a violation for the person who gives the gift. So if a normal person would say the only reason you gave them that gift was to get them to vote your way, that person can be charged under this statute. If you have recently, are now, or will in the near future be taking action directly affecting a donor, the person that is giving you the gift. So if those things are in place, that's when you don't want to take a gift from a person. So when you go to the UAC conference and you're going from table to table and you're picking up the little trinkets, the little swag that they have at the tables at the conference and all the other conferences that you'll go to as an elected official, it's under $50. It's usually under $3. And it certainly isn't going to impact the way you're going to vote. And a reasonable person wouldn't think that it would. So all of those things are all right. The other thing you can't do as an elected official under this act is you cannot require someone else to give a donation or a payment or provide a service to the county. You can't strong arm someone. This is not old time Chicago. You don't get to tell contractors they're going to do things for the county. So you can't demand a person to donate personal property, money, or services to the agency as a condition of granting any application or request for a permit, approval, or other authorization. The only time that can happen, that they can do a donation or provide payment is when they are expressly required to by statute, ordinance, or agency rule, then you can require it. So if you want something from every contractor, then you put it in ordinance, and then they have to provide it. Or if it's mutually agreed upon between the applicant and the agency, you can, but there's a whole list of affidavits that need to be signed if it's mutually agreed to. It can be made voluntarily by the applicant, but again, they have to sign an affidavit that it was voluntary, or if it's a condition of a consent decree or other court document, then they can give that donation. And again, here, it's unlawful for a person to offer such a donation for granting an application or a permit with the same exceptions. So they shouldn't be offering you those things. So now those are the prohibitions, the things that you must disclose. You must disclose in a written statement and or in public meeting if you receive compensation for assisting a person in a transaction with the county. Anytime that you assist someone in a transaction with the county, you should disclose that, but particularly if they are paying you for it. And again, it's really odd. I thought this was odd the first time I read it, and every time I train on it. You can actually, your neighbor can say, I'm going through this permit process. You, as a commissioner, you understand the process. Can you just help me along, and I'll pay you for your time to help me through the process. Technically, under the statute, you can do that, but you must disclose it in writing and in public when you discuss that issue at an open public meeting. If you're an officer, director, agent, employee, or owner of a substantial interest, $2,000 or more, of a business that is subject to regulation by the agency. So San Juan has their own health department here yet? County health department, right? Yep. So all the cafes in town are regulated by the county health department. So if you have a $2,000 interest or more in one of the local cafes, you must each year identify that conflict of interest in writing when you fill out your annual conflict of interest statement in January. And each time that cafe is discussed at a public meeting, you must remind everyone that you own part of that cafe. Okay? But any other business that's regulated by the county. Or same situation if you own or have an interest in a business that conducts a transaction with the agency in which you'll receive compensation. So you might own a portion of a software company who's just bid on doing some work for the county. At the time that they're answering the bid, you should disclose that. You should have disclosed you're owning a business that might do business with the county at some time in the future in your January disclosure. And at the time that you choose who you're going to use to do that software work, you disclose again. Again, you can still vote on it, but you must disclose that you have an interest in that business. Complaints of any violations of the chapter are filed with the Political Subdivisions Ethics Review Committee unless there is a local ethics committee that has been created. And I don't think San Juan has a local ethics committee. So you would, anyone who feels that any member or any employee of the county violated this chapter, they would make their complaint to the Political Subdivisions Ethics Review Committee down at the state. The statute says that someone who violates this chapter shall be dismissed from employment or office if you knowingly and intentionally violate the chapter. So, of course, knowing and having something be intentional is a pretty high bar, Brittany, right? To prove in a court. But still, if you are found to have intentionally violated the chapter, you can be charged with a Class B misdemeanor up to a second-degree felony, depending on the value of the violation that you had. And the agency can rescind or void any contract that was entered into in respect to a violation of the chapter without returning any portion of the consideration the agency has received. So that software company that you owned a part of, Later on, the county finds out that you own part of it and fix the bid because you knew what the other bidders were going to bid on that piece of business. Now the county can void that contract and not pay that software company for the work they've done to date under the law. So it's pretty healthy penalties. And again, because they're criminal, I can't help you. Then we go to the personal use of public property. Misusing public money or public property. This statute allows for personal use of public property only under certain conditions. And those conditions are, first of all, the employee that uses that public equipment for personal use must be authorized to use the property to fulfill their public duties for a county. So one that I used to get asked about all the time is the guys in the weed department want to take the weed sprayer home for the weekend and do their yard and some neighbors' yards. That okay? Well, it was never a big deal. You really went to the county policy until this statute was passed a few years ago. And when it was first passed, that would have been a felony for the public employee to take the weed sprayer home and use it. Now it's allowed if you've allowed it. And if it's not allowed, a weed sprayer would probably be a misdemeanor. But that's only if it's an employee that uses the weed sprayer to do their normal job. So someone in the clerk's office can't use the weed sprayer because they're not authorized to use the weed sprayer to conduct their public duties. So that's the first piece. Then the primary purpose of the property is for the employee to fulfill the public duties for the county. So if you're buying equipment mostly to let employees use it for personal use, that's not okay. The first purpose of that piece of property has to be to use it for county business. The state auditor, when he pushed for this law to be put in place, he was very upset with special service districts in particular that were buying iPads for their board members. And they were going to board meetings once a quarter. So 4 times a year for an hour, they used the iPad for work. And the rest of the time, it was their own personal iPad. And that rubbed him the wrong way. And it should. That's not reasonable use of public property. And the personal use has to be authorized by the governing body in a policy or ordinance prior to the public use. So I know that San Juan's passed a policy and ordinance identifying the times and exceptions where persons can use public property for their personal use, like the deputies driving their squad cars home. There is a benefit to the county for that. Highway departments, many highway people drive their vehicles home so that they can go directly to an emergency rather than having to come to the courthouse to pick up their vehicle. So all of those things are in the ordinance, but that's an important one that you'll want to review on a regular basis to make sure you're okay with all the uses. And then there's also, we lobbied for an exception to de minimis personal use of property if the value provided to the county substantially outweighs the value of personal use and if the de minimis personal use is not otherwise prohibited by law. So things like using the county computer to check your personal email on your lunch break. All of those things that we already had the fight years ago with the IRS, with the value of the use, and they created this de minimis layer that anything de minimis is not a problem. And so we use that same de minimis value here. Okay. So that is the County Disclosure Act. Then we get to nepotism or the prohibiting employment of relatives. And under the act, a relative is father, mother, husband, wife, son, daughter, sister, brother, grandfather, grandmother, aunt, uncle, nephew, niece, grandson, granddaughter, first cousin, mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, or daughter-in-law. Have I just named every single other person in the county? In a few counties, that's a pretty extensive list, and it really goes to making this a difficult one to watch, except for a couple of things. First of all, the act does not prohibit employing a family member. It prohibits supervising a family member. And then there also is an exception for rural counties and cities. So number one, the first prohibition is here. No officer may employ, appoint, vote for, or recommend the appointment of a relative in any employment paid for from public funds if the employee is going to be supervised by a relative. So not only is the commission for hiring the employee in trouble, but so is the HR director for recommending them, and anybody else that voted for or recommended that person to be employed in that position where their supervisor is a family member. Also, accepting the job is a violation of the act. So the employee who accepted that job knowing that their family member is going to be their supervisor is violating the act. That's important because the penalty here is a misdemeanor for every single day of employment. So when I first started doing this training, I'd hear the in the behind me and at the front desk, and it's like, but oh, thank you. Well, Dave's been working for his dad there in the road shop now for over a year. Well, that's 365 misdemeanors that they both have to deal with. So this is an important one to be aware of and be considerate of. Now, there are exceptions. If both the employees worked together in the same department and one of them was promoted to the supervisor, that's okay. Then it's okay because you didn't hire somebody into the spot to be supervised. If they were appointed and qualified through the civil service or merit system, it's not a violation. Or if they're paid from vocational training funds, if they're a temp for 12 weeks or less, if they're actually a volunteer that's appointed by the county, or if the appointee is the only person available, qualified, or eligible for the position, and the CAO determines that and makes it public that that's why they're hiring the person, is because they are the only person or the best qualified person, and the supervisor, their relative, is also the only person or best person to supervise them. Then it's allowed with some requirements. If you're going to use any of these exceptions, then the supervisor shall make a complete written disclosure of the relationship that they have with the employee to the chief administrative officer, and they cannot conduct an evaluation of the performance of that employee, and they cannot make any recommendation related to any increase in their salary. Okay, so it makes it kind of tough to be a supervisor when you can't do a performance appraisal, but you'll have to work around that if that is the case. There's also an exception in rural areas. So if there are fewer than 3,000 people living within 40 miles of the place of employment, then the supervisor can be a family member, still under those same restrictions that they can't do the performance. So that would be, and again, it's the place of employment, not necessarily a county courthouse. So a lot of counties, there's more than 3,000 people in the county seat, but the road shop out on the West Desert has maybe 3 people within 40 miles. So that employee, you can use this exception for rural. And again, for using this exception, you must make sure that the job opening had reasonable public notice and that the relative is the best qualified candidate. I'll just remind you that we have the County Personnel Management Act that outlines the requirements and limitations and procedures to be followed regarding the management of county employees. San Juan County is not large enough that they are required to follow the act, but I know that through their personnel policy, they follow many of the items that are in the County Personnel Management Act. It's getting late. I've gone over already, so I'm going to skip through some of this. Again, I know I do training for the HR directors, and Anne Marie is aware of all of these things. And I just wanted to give one last warning because it's something new that many of the county officials are doing that they didn't do in the past, and that is using their social media pages. And if you use your social media pages throughout your election or re-election campaigns, understand that your personal social media becomes government as soon as you start talking about the county on it. So once you start talking about the county on your social media page, now you are restricted, just as the county would be, from if somebody puts a comment. If you have a social media page set up that people can make comments on your Facebook or Twitter, whatever, then you can't erase their comment because you don't like it. You don't want it on your page. That's freedom, free speech, and you need to leave that on your page. There are ways to take care of that, and I'm going to leave this. Hopefully you're going to be able to make it to the UAC training 17th and 18th of January, and I think we'll be covering this in a little bit more detail. But if you do use your social media pages and you know that people comment on things about the county, or you've commented about things about the county on your social media page, give me a call and we'll talk about the ways that you can set those things up to make them informational. You're getting information out, but as soon as you allow comments back, you've got freedom of speech issues that are not just your issues, they're the county's issues too. Okay. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. A couple of things I want to say about this training is, first of all, Johnny's available all the time. If you have any questions, please call him or people at USIP. We as a commission will be attending the legislature, which starts on the 17th of January for 45 days. And Johnny is there all the time. You'll see him there every day at the legislature, and he can help with legislation that's being proposed that would be damaging to the county. And so look for him, and he'll give you a heads up on hearings or meetings that are going on at the legislature that you should attend and make comment or whatever. But he's a real good lightning rod when it comes to legislation that affect us as county commissioners. Okay, thanks, Johnny. Sorry I missed that. Mac, where are we now?
So you'd be on business action items.
Okay. Number 6, county board discussion and assignments for the year. So if you look in your packet on upper right-hand corner, it says item 6. You can find these, and I'll let Mac kind of go through them.
Yeah.
I already have my marks.
Okay.
So typically, we would go through this first meeting, and everybody delegates or decides which boards that they want to be on for the next year, and these can rotate throughout your tenure as well on here. So know that if you don't get an opportunity to serve on any of these one of these boards this year, next year you'll also have a chance to as well. And so they'll kind of rotate at your leisure, however you guys want to play that out. But I can go through each one of these individually. I sent them to you before in a separate email, hoping that you would have them and have a chance to look through them. I don't know if so some of these boards specific, like the USIP board that Commissioner Adams sits on. I gave a summary of that. Commissioner Adams still by right remains on that board, and so it's more of an acknowledgement that
Well,
he's
it's an elected position,
correct.
Johnny, from fourth class county.
Yes, and so on there, so you'll see in here the USIP board. I had mentioned that that you do have to be elected to it by another member of that fourth class county, or there are some at-large members, but those also have to be elected by representatives of another county. So it's not something we just volunteer. Either three of you, you've got to be appointed to that. Similar to that, you have the CIB, the Permanent Community Impact Fund Board. This is appointed by the governor, and Commissioner Adams is our representative there. When I look at the NACO, Commissioner Adams does sit on the Rural Action Caucus, and this is something that he was appointed to. You'll see the National Association of Counties, because there's been a mix-up of commissioners throughout the nation. There will be boards that will be opening up with NACO, and so the National Association of Counties and their governing body. I kind of listed kind of a summary of what they have on here, but really pay attention to their website. UAC, they'll receive a list of boards that are available and ask if there's any commissioners that want to sign up for those boards as well. And so, like I said, Commissioner Adams has been on the Rural Action Caucus
And the public lands.
the public lands one as well for, I think that's for UAC, right?
No, that's NACO.
Okay. Okay, so two. So just be mindful of watching for those NACO boards as open up. If you go back up to the top, we do have the San Juan County Economic Development Board. There's a seat that's available there. Navajo Revitalization Board, those we have two. Each of you that have a district within the Navajo Nation is appointed automatically to this board. So Sylvia and Jamie, both of you are automatically on the Navajo Revitalization Board. County Fair Board really is something we've had in the past. We've got to get going again. Every year, this board typically forms and meets if there's a question on the boards and on regarding the fair. This board kind of helps that. You know, a couple years ago we had a question of whether or not we hold a mud bog. So we're in a drought, they're wanting to hold a mud bog. We passed it through the board. It's like, board, doesn't really make sense for us to have a mud bog when all of our farmers are struggling right now for water. So let's not put a bunch of water in a hole and, you know, celebrate driving through it. And so we use the Fair Board to help us with that decision. And so the San Juan County Public Health Board, this is a board that typically has a commissioner sitting on. Same with San Juan Counseling. San Juan Transportation District, Commissioner Adams, this is your board. I don't know if this is available. This is typically comprised of cities and the county
Yeah, that
on there. And so you have
one of them
representative-
wants to serve, that's fine with me.
So you typically have like Bluff, Blanding, Monticello, us, that are on this committee, that board. Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments. This is our association of governments in general. We participate with Southeastern Utah Association in a meeting. I believe that's a quarterly meeting.
No, it's a monthly,
Monthly? Okay.
but it's for counties, specifically Emery, Carbon, Grand, and San Juan.
Now this one, they help kind of decide priorities with economic development, CDBG grant funding, things like that take place. A lot of the city mayors attend this as well, so it's an opportunity to rub shoulders with them. Commissioner Adams has been our representative in the past on that board.
They just elected me as the chair. for
And
next
you
year.
were the chair. Okay, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council Board. This is a whole new board mandated by the state that we need to get going. Brittany and I will be able to help you with it. We just passed an ordinance last month with it, but this is typically members of the judges. I was glad to see Judge Manley here today. She's one of those representatives that's automatic on that board, as well as adult probation and parole. Parole, not patrol, parole.
But we have to have one commissioner on
We have
that
to have
board.
one commissioner, and the commissioner actually chairs the committee, and so you would be responsible and in charge of the committee. Like I mentioned, Brittany and I will help you on that. But this is meeting with the Children's Justice Center and the Sheriff's Office, the Attorney's Office, obviously, school district members like that. They kind of help us oversee and try to figure out if there's any areas that need improvement throughout the county within the justice system. This kind of brings all of the collective group together to create a strategy and develop a plan. The plan is required by next November, I believe it is. The state statute had mentioned we've got to have not only the coordinating board meeting, but also come up with a plan of, what do we need to do to address the needs. And I'm hoping at the state, where this is a state mandated, I'm hoping that the final outcome of all of this planning is really funds to help fix. If we have a big issue of recidivism here in the county, so a lot of inmates coming back into committing the same crimes, or if there's a need for additional funding to prevent this, then whatever that is, I'm hoping that the state takes it upon them to fund some of this as well in partnership. But I don't know. This is just one of those unfunded mandates that we get to do. And we get to develop a strategy and a plan. And I'm hoping that they have a plan to help us with that. And so we'll go through that one. Local Homeless Coordinating Committee is one that's just up and running, a couple years now. Really a year, but that is helping with the homeless population, any homeless population, either whether it's transitioning through the county or here in the county. It's helping with that. Library board.
Mac,
Yeah.
Just going back to National Association of Counties, the state of Utah has the ability to appoint any number of commissioners to those national committees. And Brandy Grace is the one that you can talk to, and she'll tell you all of the committee assignments are available. Some like health or transportation or whatever. And you as new commissioners can both be appointed to one of those national committees, but you need to talk to Brandy and make sure she knows which one you want to be appointed to. Rural Action Caucus, anybody can be appointed to that. Don't think because I'm on there that's anything special, because anybody can get on that committee. All you got to do is volunteer. So, but I'm like I said, I'm on the Public Lands Committee, and because we have so much public land in San Juan County, but there's lots and lots of committees that you can get appointed to, and they have meetings at our national conference in the spring and in the summer.
Those are super important. I think if you ever want to have, that sometimes you feel yourself as small rural little area in Utah, and nobody really knows where you're from or where it is. You talk about Monticello, and so you hear things like that, but it's an opportunity that you get to go back and your members back all the way back into Washington, D.C. And so that rural small town issues that are here, you can address at that bigger federal level. And so super good opportunity. And so I encourage both of you to sign up for any committee on there that expresses your interest, that gives you a voice at a national level. And so library board is one that we need a representative on. I've been covering Commissioner Maryboy on this one, but it would really be good to have a member of you on there to kind of help oversee library board functions. Canyon Country Partnership is one that I've been going to as well on behalf of the county. This is kind of one of those that all of the worker bees meet together. So when you look at any acronym, federal, state, attends this meeting. So BLM, Forest Service, USGS, DWR, all of them come together, and it's all the worker bees trying to coordinate all of the efforts in this area. Like I mentioned in the summer, we do have the commissioners that have been appointed, but typically it's the staff that I see at these meetings. Sometimes the commissioner pops in, but that one's up to you. if you're looking to know, for me, I attend this one because it tells me what's going on in the pulse of the county. And so it tells me what the BLM is doing, the Forest Service, what projects are coming up. So that this one is a really good one as far as the pulse. The Eastern Utah Television and Technology Association Board. This is the geeky board. If you ever want to learn about television and what it takes to continue broadcasting television throughout this area, this is our free public TV. So all of the antennas, microwaves that help broadcast this free TV throughout this region, all of us meet to ensure that that continues to go forward and that we continue to broadcast free public television throughout this area. We meet with them as well as our consultant. We have a contracted vendor that we contract with that we call him Wayne from San Juan TV. And Wayne ensures that all of our radio towers or microwaves are up and operational. And then these guys meet as a collective group throughout this region, and they've got a capital improvement list on their needs to make sure that our microwaves are updated. That, you know, as a couple of years ago, as we converted from analog to digital TV, they were the ones behind the scenes making sure all of the systems were in play and everything was upgraded so that we have digital TV being broadcast for free. And so all of them meet routinely. We will have membership funds that are allocated to capital improvement programs, but it's a lot of that coordination is between me and Wayne. Wayne is really the one behind the scenes for us that we've contracted to do all this, and then he tells me the needs, and then I just communicate them in these meetings. And so that's kind of how we work that one. But you do have the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition Board. Commissioner Gray Eyes would attend this one. We had kind of helped form this as well with the counties to work on infrastructure needs here in this region. There's oftentimes projects that come with this, and this goes all the way up. You'll see on here Uinta County, even though it's not this region, Uinta County, we play off of them with the interstates and railroads and things like that. And so super important board to be on, especially when you're looking at the planning and financing of infrastructure, road infrastructure, rail infrastructure, all of that is through here. They are great lobbying efforts as well through the state legislature. Oftentimes they will take projects to the state legislature to get funded as well. So if there's projects, I know that one of them that we've been continuing to ask for here is a 4-lane from Spanish Fork all the way down here, is, you know, all the way down to Canta. Get us a 4-lane because of all of the trucking that takes place here. Well, this 7 Infrastructure Coalition Board are the ones that helps us fight that with UDOT. And so a lot of opportunities to play with this board and to help improve our infrastructure throughout this area. Board of Adjustments and Equalization, just by being commissioners, all of you are on the Board of Adjustments and Equalization. We really formalize everything through the Board of Equalization. When Johnny was talking about, sometimes we would enter into an executive session to discuss a commercial business. This would be one of those opportunities under the Board of Equalization as they dispute their taxes. Sometimes they'll come in and show pro forma, and they don't want anybody else to see what their business incomes, revenues, expenses are. So those are kind of confidential for that nature. And so just know that you are the Board of Equalization. When this typically happens every year as people come in and appeal their property taxes that the county assessor sets, then they set up a Board of Equalization hearing, and then those hearings come to you on the final outcome, and then you guys vote whether or not to allow for the adjustment to the taxes. Redevelopment Agency Board is, we do have one project area in the county. That project area is in Bluff. It's the Bluff dwellings there that that the developer, the hotel in Bluff, that the developer had agreed and the county had agreed with him to participate in some of the infrastructure costs. We do have to reimburse him for that turn lane that's there, so some of the infrastructure costs there, and we do that under the redevelopment agency board and some of the tax increment financing that is or will be getting from them. We've got to set up that taxing entity, and so we'll use the redevelopment agency board hat that you also wear to do that tax increment reimbursement, and so that one will come this year. The Regional Broadband Committee, this is one that Commissioner Grayes and I both sat on. This is a conglomerate of other counties around us, but mainly the Navajo Nation. This is really kind of spearheaded through Coconino County and one of the presidents there on their boards.
Lena
She
Fowler. Lena
Yes,
Fowler.
yes, exactly. So she's been instrumental on getting this committee up and going and getting really those decision makers to all come together as a body. And here in Utah, we've been fortunate that we had a broadband project in place prior to COVID and ARPA taking place. So we were receiving federal funds to extend broadband throughout the county already. But now, through this committee, we're working on that last mile, getting internet to the homes through that last mile, not necessarily the backbone infrastructure that we have. And so we go to these committees. The state of Utah, they're in attendance with it. Most any cell phone provider or cable provider is also in attendance to these meetings. And so it's all of us coming together. What do we need to do to get it to the last mile outside of what we've done? And so we do need somebody to help continue forward with that project and those meetings. And then obviously a liaison for the Navajo Nation, Utah Navajo Commission, and the Utah Navajo chapters is super important, that we have that point person that continues to either attend those meetings or communicate through those entities on there. You know, as we've reached out from time to time to the Utah Navajo Commission, it's one of those meetings. A lot of times there's Mac, will you attend this for us? Or the Utah Navajo Commission will reach out to us and want an update on, you know, roads or whatever the things that we're working on that they're interested in. Elections, you know, that's another one that we would go and present to them. And so it's just important that we maintain that dialogue and relation with them, you know, kind of that weekly, monthly, or as needed basis. And so with that, that's kind of all of the boards that we have. Now it's up to you to tell me who wants to set on this. So
Before we do that, Mac, NACO, National Association of Counties, has their spring legislative conference on February 11th through the 14th. As I look at the calendar, and you're going to have a meeting, a newly elected officials meeting with Brandy
yes,
pretty soon, aren't you?
Yeah.
13th and the 14th
Of
January.
January.
We'll see.
Okay.
So at that point, I would meet with her and ask her, what are the NACO committees that you could be on if you want to go to that legislative conference in DC?
So that's with Brady Grace.
With what?
Brady Grace is in that group. Is she?
Brandy, yeah.
Brandy.
Yeah,
Okay.
Brandy.
Brandy.
She's the executive director of UAC. So I'm looking at
So when is that conference? Is just that?
it's the scheduled for the 11th through the 14th, but some of the like ag meeting or public lands meeting or some of those meetings will even take place on the 10th before the actual conference starts. So my recommendation would be, if you want to go, fly out of Salt Lake on the 9th and be there the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And if you want to stay till the 14th and fly back on the 15th, that would be okay. But if you want me to tell you what really you ought to do, there's not much happens after the 12th. It's kind of a social club, a lot of get-togethers and a little soda pop, and whatever. But these commissioners from around the country like to get together and socialize. I would say if we left on the 9th, since we'll already be in Salt Lake
Is
for
that February, in February?
February,
Okay.
we'll be up there the 7th, 8th, and 9th. We could actually fly out the 9th or the morning of the 10th to DC and be there the 10th, 11th, and 12th. The general session is on the 12th, and then possibly come home on the 13th. But if you want to stay the 14th, then I understand, you're new at it. It's kind of a waste of time as far as I'm concerned. But think about that, because if you want to do that, we need to have Anne Marie get us some flights and some rooms and stuff right away.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the National Association Annual Convention is on July 21st through 24th, and it's in Austin, Texas. And it's somewhat a repeat, but it's a little more. The 21st is a Friday, so you might want to fly down on the 20th, be there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday's the end, and come home Monday or Tuesday. Again, if you want to get good rooms and good flights and stuff, you need to have Anne Marie get that scheduled right away. And then when you meet with Brandy, get yourself assigned to a committee.
Okay.
Agriculture, transportation, healthcare, public lands, whatever. But anyway, just be aware that those two conferences will be going on in February and July.
Okay, thank you.
So let's see.
In the past, they've produced a list on the UAC website
Mhm.
of which committees are there.
They have.
So if it's up, I'll send you a link to
They
that.
have,
So
yeah.
that,
Okay.
so that you can look at all of them and just kind of decide which ones would be interesting to
Exactly.
on there. And then I think they also have what is it? It's not Waco. It's the Western Conference.
No, it's
Western Association of Counties.
Western Interlocal. No, let's see. Yeah,
WEC.
No.
WEC.
something like that.
Yeah, so that's about the same time as the July meeting, where
It's
kind of the
actually
Western
in
states. Is it? Okay.
the end of May.
So that one where the Western states meet. that one's always a
WIR,
good one.
Western Interlocal Region.
Yeah, that one's a good one to also pay attention to. A lot of Western state issues are brought up. That Montana.
It's just
Idaho,
pretty much
Utah.
counties from the west, but there are a few people that come from back east because they want to keep an eye on what we're doing.
Yeah.
So know that one is out there as
So
well.
WIR, I could probably look that one up, Mac.
Is that one in May? I was
Yeah,
thinking
Google
it was
that.
about the same time as
Google that WIR. I'm pretty sure it's probably in May, isn't it, Johnny?
Yes.
That one's a good one to pay attention to.
And that UAC training,
May 17th through 19th.
17th of January.
17th of January is UAC training. That's the day we're going up for the.
Do you know?
Legislative session.
We'll go down through them and you can volunteer for whatever you
I think
want.
they're planning on everybody can attend the opening of the legislature in the morning.
And that's local day at the legislature on
Next
Wednesday.
day is the capital.
Yeah.
The day at the
So
legislature.
your UAC training's on the 17th, and then local officials at the Capitol is on the 18th. You've already got, I think you've got rooms, but I'm not.
Yeah. I think
Yep.
so.
Yeah,
Okay. You want us to make assignments then,
We
Johnny?
do need to get the assignments.
San Juan Economic Development Board, who'd like to serve on that? One of you two. Okay, Sylvia. You're both on Navajo Revitalization. You're both on County Fair Board.
Are we both there?
Yeah,
Okay.
Public Health. Which one would, Jamie? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. San Juan Counseling, Sylvia.
Okay.
You want to do that one?
Well, you'd be good at that one.
Okay.
Would you?
Yeah.
Okay, Jamie, you can serve on both, okay? Transportation Committee,
You're-
Sylvia?
You said you were president on that one,
No, not on
or chair on the
San Juan
Okay.
Counseling,
Okay.
transportation.
on the Transportation District.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so
I'm
you're
not
not
sure.
on the
How
No.
about you? Have you taken any?
Me, I'll take a few.
Okay. Well,
You want to do that one?
I can do that one.
I think you meet once a year.
Okay.
AOG, I'll do that one.
Uh-huh.
I'll do the CIB.
Yeah.
I'll do the Utah
You have
County
to-
Indemnity Pool. And I am the
The
UAC board member
Okay.
from San Juan County, so I've got those next four. Criminal Justice. You want that one, Jamie?
Okay.
Kind of have to keep an eye on Brittany on that committee.
Yeah.
Unless I make Mitch go.
NACO will all be on NACO. Homeless Committee, who would like that one?
Is that the one? Did you do it with Emery? Are you guys
Yes.
going to the homeless one?
We do. I'm the chair, and she's the vice chair because nobody else wanted to be on it. This
Oh,
is
okay, so what you wanna keep it or?
no. You can. I'd certainly welcome you to
The thing
that.
is, I want the library board,
Okay,
You can do both, and so that
but I wanna. You're going to the library.
I
Would you still keep going if
I
I go
would.
to?
absolutely yeah.
Go.
Yep.
Anyway, and I did ask Marie if I volunteer for the homeless, if she would continue to go with me, and she said
Yeah.
yes.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. We
Okay.
definitely need help.
CCP is MAC. Eastern Utah Television, that's been MAC. Do you, either one of you want that? Eastern
We'll
Utah
let Jamie
Television?
catch up. I think I'm taking everything.
It's really boring.
It's really boring.
If you
Doing a
want
It is
boring
more just coordinating me
one.
with
Which is-
Wayne.
Which is the boring one?
So
Eastern Utah Television,
Yeah.
don't take that one.
Well, maybe I wanna,
How about seven county infrastructure? We need one of you on there,
we did.
I wanna do that one.
okay?
Go ahead, Sylvia. Yeah.
We're all on the Board of Equalization.
same with the next
Redevelopment
one.
Agency, I think we're all on that
Yep.
too.
Yep.
Regional Broadband Committee, Jamie, you wanna do that?
Sure. That's not the boring one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay,
How about the last one? You get to do the last
The
one?
point
Oh, he's-
person, the point person for
liaison,
Navajo Nation, Navajo Commission, Navajo chapters.
Yeah.
Okay, Jamie.
With Jamie?
you've been on that before, haven't you, Jamie? Yeah,
I
He's
already
got a
got
lot of
Jamie's name on
experience
that
with
one.
he understood that, yeah. Okay,
Perfect.
very good.
That is it for that item.
All right, number 7, consideration approval of travel reimbursement form for the calendar year. I'll have Mac explain
Okay,
that.
on this one here, the IRS, we typically in our county travel policy follow the IRS. When they adjust, we adjust as well. They adjusted last July due to inflation, June, July, and then here, December 29th, they adjusted again. The new adjustment takes us to 65.5 cents per mile from 62.5 in the past, so about a 3% increase
Start your vehicle.
on there. Yeah, I know that's it. We wanted to make sure we had this on the agenda today so that as you travel in July, you're at that higher rate, the higher IRS rate. I
There'll
did.
be an out of the area adjustment too, won't there, when you go to DC? and
Yes, yep. And that's more of a per diem based on
Yeah.
area. And so this is typically our travel, and I appreciate you bringing that up. This is travel that's considered here in Utah alone. So when staff or you guys travel in Utah, we fill out this form. Anything outside of Utah travel has to be pre-approved. And at that point in time, we're looking at the per diem rates for areas. So if you travel like to Las Vegas, Washington, D.C., there are different premium rates that the IRS allows, and we go for those per diem
But
rates
you
on
don't
those. And so,
collect that if you're driving a county vehicle.
correct. Yep. Yes.
But you might want to collect the meal rate, you know.
Yep, the mill rate is important. I did check. We follow the state
See, Brent,
on the mill rates on there, and they haven't adjusted theirs. If they adjust theirs, we'll adjust ours. But that's usually my thing that I look at is the state rates on there, what's approved at the state legislators. The Commissioner Adams did mention on the travel, if, and this is in our policy as well, as if you're traveling, we do have the reimbursement rates, $11 for breakfast, $14 for lunch, $20 for dinner. If you're attending a conference that offers the meal already in the conference itself, you cannot claim a travel reimbursement for that meal unless there are dietary restrictions that you're on that requires you to eat outside of what they're providing you. So say, for example, if the hotel that you stay in offers a continental breakfast already, you're not entitled to that $11 breakfast allowance unless your diet requires a different type of meal that's not on the continental. And so just be knowledgeable of that. The time when you travel is typically when you begin travel, and this is all in our policy, and we'll get you the policy behind it. So many hours of travel at a different time will put you into a dinner, allowance, and so we'll help you with that. But
Bonnie, can we have some discussion on that? Is that set in statute?
when you take off, when you
meals?
leave, the meals are set in your policy, not in the
one-
statute.
At one point, when Lane Stevens was on the commission, he suggested that we just do a daily rate. You don't have to be required to eat 3 meals, but you have a $45 daily rate because so many times you have breakfast or lunch and dinner, you can't eat for $45.
No. And so this will also adjust where this is Utah. If you're going to Washington,
No, I just meant in
here
the
in
state.
Utah. Yeah.
In the state,
Yeah, that is.
I mean,
I think then you get into that de minimis. What is the minimal amount that you would want an employee
so
or
we're gonna
public
tell our
official?
employees, we want you to go
$20.
get us a snack bar and a bottle of water for breakfast.
That's it. $11 breakfast
mean,
is not a
To
lot.
me,
Not a lot.
I've traveled a lot and used this a lot. I think we're kind of asking everybody to really skimp because meals are so expensive anymore. I mean, you go down to Little America for breakfast and have some eggs and bacon and hash browns, you're going to spend $20.
Yes, Little America, you will.
So then we got to get in our car and drive down to McDonald's. To get
Yes.
breakfast.
Yes, you're going to the
Be
McDonald's.
under the rate.
Go
I
to
don't
the
know,
dollar
it
menu
just-
and yeah.
It seems kind of
Yeah.
out of.
And we can certainly look at this is all back to the county's travel policy, and so I can bring that back and we certainly look at
I
changing
wish
that.
you would. I just think it's too skimpy.
Yeah, and I think we can also send a message to the state finance. They're the ones that also set this rate at the state level. Is like, hey, as inflation rises, maybe some of these allowances should as well. And so that's where I just looked at their website before I posted this on the agenda to make sure that they haven't adjusted theirs, which I agree.
Well, I can
$20
tell you
for
from
dinner's not a
experience,
lot.
These guys are going to have
Johnny?
a hard time. Stan.
We just redid our reimbursement for the USIP board, and we had it reviewed by legal counsel. And there is some tricks, especially if you're trying to use both the state and the.
Yeah.
That's a real. So I just welcome you and Brittany to send me your policy, and I'll.
We can go through
use
it. Yeah.
that legal analysis that we already got for our board to help you.
Yeah.
make sure
Did you guys
your
raise your
policy is
rates?
updated. We use all the federal rates now.
Okay.
They are a few dollars more, and the problem is the statute says if you so much as refer to the state reimbursement code,
Uh-huh.
then you have to follow all of its rules,
Oh wow. Okay.
all of them.
Yeah, and I don't think
And
we go
some
that
of them
far.
are ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can't, there is no hotel in the
Like
state
internet
where you
and-
can stay for the rate that the state says.
Yeah,
Not
totally.
only see.
Yeah. Okay. Let's work on it. There's one of the things that I need to note on here, and I don't know if you want to change. It says in here that All travel expenses must be submitted within 30 days of travel. For me, from a financial perspective, this makes sense as we are at year end, just this last month. We allow expenses to come in and be incurred from last month up to February, sometimes into the middle of March. But I do have one, that we received last week that's going back 6 months. And I have an executive director that's 6 months in arrears as well and wanting reimbursed outside of this 30. 6 months after December 30th puts us in a huge issue, huge bind. One of them, it will put that department over budget, come up with a financial audit through our independent auditors. So I don't know what to do. It's stated on here, it's stated in our policy.
Are we still gonna have a policy about lodging if you stay with family?
We still have that in the policy where
It's
we
not-
reimburse you
It's not
if you
listed on
stay.
there.
It's not. That's just in our travel policy. We have that. If you stay with family, then there is that. We pay you instead of paying for your hotel. We pay you $45 a day.
$45, $50.
I think it's like 48, isn't it?
Yeah,
48?
Or it
yeah,
was
Okay.
on the other form.
yeah. That travel policy form. So I don't know if you wanted me to still keep within that. I've been fighting for it. The 30 days makes sense on a fiscal standpoint, making sure that we're paying our bills timely.
Especially toward the end of the year when it's kind of hard to adjust the budget.
Yeah. Yep. And one of them is an elected official. So look, how do you do that when it's back in October and we approved the end of the year budget, and do we really go back that far to October? And so if you're fine with keeping with that 30 days, I'll keep it there. But I did want to bring it up to have that discussion with you
Yeah. Keep
today.
it
Okay.
darkened to 30.
Okay. Yeah, you should know, especially in those executive and elected positions. With that, I would need a motion to accept, or we could table it. I'd hate to table it because then it puts us into a couple more weeks at a lower rate. If you want to accept this, then I can bring back
The mills.
our policy and look at the policy at another date on the mills.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to accept and to bring back
Travel policy.
travel policy for review.
You have a motion to accept the travel policy and reimbursement with the option to bring back more information on the meals rate. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I vote aye as well, so it's unanimous. No dissent. Number 8, consider and approve the 2023 beer license application, Sunrise Trading Post and Shirt Tail Store, and Lyman Duncan's basement.
Don't tell him that. He'll be going to his house looking for. So, I don't know if you want to give an explanation of why the commissioners are seeing these.
It's an annual renewal of the alcohol license that they're required to do each year. So they've filled out the application, they paid the county fee, and the application's ready to be voted on by the
This
commission.
is just beer, not hard.
Correct,
Yeah.
And this is just renewal, it's not,
yes.
okay.
Do you have a motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
Jamie makes a motion to approve the 2023 beer license application as listed. Do we have a second?
I will second it.
Second by Sylvia. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and so that one's unanimous as well. Number 9, consideration and approval of 2023 local alcohol license application, and that's different, right, Lyman?
Yes,
Vale's Trading Post?
Yeah,
yeah.
Valet's Trading Post in in Mexican Hat. So they have to have a different class of license to serve more than beer.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to list all the Johnny. Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
Jamie makes a motion to approve the 2023 alcohol license application from Valet's Trading Post. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Have a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye also, so it's unanimous. With no dissent. Chief Administrator's Officer's Report.
So I just added this on, and this is new to the agenda as the commissioner's report. Oftentimes there are things that I'm doing behind the scenes that it'll be good just to report on to you. Say, for example, on your next meeting, next scheduled commission meeting will be held on the 17th. On 17th, you also have training in Salt Lake City. And so our commission meetings typically begin at 11 a.m. and we need to get you out of here before that time to get you up to Taylorsville by 3. So one of the things we were thinking about is having the commission meeting at 9 in the morning. And then so you're here at 9 to 10. At 10, get you out to get you up north by 3. And so it kind of gives you a little bit.
Pushing it.
Is it racing time? I don't know.
They leave at 10, 11, 12.
To Taylorsville. So not Salt Lake. To
That's
Taylorsville.
only 5 hours.
how long does it take from here
To Taylorsville?
to Salt Lake? 5 hours, right?
5 or 6, depending
Okay.
on the weather.
Yeah, and so we'll watch on there. We felt that if we at least start at 9, get you out of here by 10, and it'll get you up there before. Is it pushing it?
No bathroom breaks.
No, right?
It's a straight drive.
So
Okay.
is the meeting actually start at 3 or 2?
3.
3.
3?
So it starts at 3.
Yeah.
So let me know if you feel that that's too tight on travel time. Then we can certainly postpone
We
the
could-
meeting, but
We could start even at 8.
Yeah.
we could start at 8. Yeah.
Would you rather start
Yeah.
at 8 and give
Yeah.
yourself a little?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
Are you
Okay, we
going to
could do
that
that.
one, Brittany?
I'm
You don't
completely
do
fine with
one, do
that.
you? I mean, you are a newly
You will,
elected
yeah.
official.
You would be.
Oh,
It is for
actually,
you.
yeah, that one I'm signed up for.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's start at 8
So
then.
you,
I'm
Lyman,
signed up for that one.
the commissioners. Okay. So we'll begin that meeting. We'll keep the agenda light on there so that we can get you in and out of that meeting. But I do have kind of your phones. We have a binder that Anne-Marie has helped put together, kind of all of our policies and organization chart and kind of the what to's. We've got your statute of all of the things that you're required as commissioners to do. Kind of for me, it's the how-to book.
Commission
But
101.
yeah, part. You're gonna get a lot of training, and like today, I'm excited. Today's training seemed long. Even I was taking notes on it. There were useful things that even I learned from there. But you're gonna get similar training at UAC. Just bear with it and know that it's important that you know those that you have that training and that it's cemented into your heads. I think that's why they do it so many times. But from here, and we appreciate the training today from Johnny, because then we will take that same training, we have it recorded, we will push that out to our other boards as well. So the library board, health district, the health department board, they will all now have that training as well. And so it just kind of helps everybody be on the same page, same training with that. But as far as that, I don't have any other administrative items to report right now. We'll catch you on that, getting everything up to speed on the next one.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Well, I just want to thank you guys for helping us today. It was 3:00 in the morning. I thought, well, I can't keep learning anymore. I'm just so tired. And it was so nice. You even took care of me, took my coat away. I mean, I felt so. Did you feel that way? I felt like you guys assisted so well, and I hope you keep continuing to be patient with us
Oh,
as we
absolutely.
learn. But
Yep. That's what we do.
So
Yeah.
Trying to learn all the acronyms. You
Yes,
know,
it'll take
to
it'll
make
take
an
a while.
alphabet book or something.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things that we don't have
Yeah.
created is an acronym definition book because you need it. But you will pick on quickly.
And also, I want to thank Anne-Marie. She had done lots of
Mm-hmm.
paperwork and stuff for us, and
Yes.
appreciate that. Thank you. Everybody else.
Well, at 2:00 in the morning, you didn't wake Brian up, did you?
No. I was just watching. Really
Watch
enjoy
him
his
over there
sleep
peacefully
sometimes.
sleeping. You're like, that's not fair.
Well, there's a lot.
There will be a
At
lot.
the beginning, you kind of feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose, but as you come every week, it'll get more natural to you. And there are some things that we have to take care of quick. So,
Thank you.
all right. The other thing on the agenda would be commission reports, and we could each give a report if we'd done anything, but I don't suppose we want to make a report today. Unless you want to.
A lot of the times when you go to and you attend your board meetings, if there are things that you want the commission as a body to know, that's when you would come in and report. So say, for example, during COVID, the health department and the health board may be doing this and these preventative measures with COVID. Well, you would come back and use that time during commission reports to kind of give all the commissioners an update of where things were at. So if you attend the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition meeting, you would then come back and report on those items that you've learned that you want everybody to know of what's taking place in the county. And it's also a good forum to let the public know kind of what you're working on behind the scenes as well. And so that's why I put mine on there as well, because I think there's things that I'm working on behind the scenes that will be helpful for you guys to know.
And one more thing, I felt it was so good for you guys to help us facilitate to have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mhm.
I thought that it's something that
It's needed.
needed to do. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
We'll try and put that on the agenda every time.
We do. Yep, we have it on our system. It'll be there.
Well,
Quick question really quick. Did you approve all 3 of the beer licenses? Did I miss that?
yeah, we did.
All 3 or 2 of them were together?
Vale and 1 for Vale.
It's Sunrise and Vales. That's
Sunrise. So there's 2 for Sunrise and 1 for Vales. I just wanted
okay. Yeah, so that the Sunrise one was all as long as it's not a different
to
name
know I missed it.
entity.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I do a motion to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second, Jamie?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second to adjourn. If anybody votes against this, they can stay here.
That's what it would be.
All in favor?
I
It's
You
unanimous.
see, that's one thing that I didn't get to practice, so I was looking at it because I thought you had my practice.
The first official meeting.
Sign that type for the new hire stuff. So
Okay.
you have it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate that. That was good.
Kelly says he wants to go with us tomorrow night.
Kiss and
I
then.
will get you yours.
I'll meet you in the lobby about 5:45 then.
Huh?
I'll meet you in the lobby 5:30, 5:45.
Yeah, just there at the